Hello and welcome to this webinar on writing abstracts for the LILAC conference. My name is Jess Haig and my pronouns are she and her.
My name is Sam Aston and my pronouns are she and her.
So this is a recorded version of a workshop that we delivered online through Zoom, and we are sharing this workshop with you in order to hopefully add more voices to the LILAC conference in future years. So we'll go to the slides now, just to give you a flavour of what this workshop will include. So myself and Sam are from the LILAC programme team. Sam is the Deputy Chair of the conference and the Programme Manager, and I am the Programme Support Officer. So together we collect we publish the call for papers, and then we go through the presentations at the end of the reviewing process and put together the programme. So if we go on to the next slide, it is quite wordy, but this is the process for how papers are put together within the LILAC programme. Firstly, the call for presentations is released. The call for presentations for LILAC 2023 was released earlier in October, and all abstracts must be submitted by Wednesday the 16th of November. So prospective presenters should make their own account on the LILAC conference website. This is an account that's specific to you, and you should always use your own email address rather than do it through an administrator, because all of the communications will come directly then to you. Through that account, then you can submit your presentation abstract, and then on the 17th of November these abstracts are anonymously sent to peer reviewers. So reviewers come from all sectors, from different positions such as heads of service, but also academic librarians, academic skills tutors, learning developers, and people with a general interest in information literacy, academics, school librarians, health librarians, and they come from all over the world. Each reviewer has volunteered, so nobody in LILAC gets paid. Me and Sam, we are volunteers as well. The reviewers are all doing this voluntarily, and they all receive 3 to 4 papers to review. The reviewers go through the abstracts and they mark them up against the reviewer guidelines. These are available on the LILAC website as well, and we'll go through those in a minute. So these reviewer guidelines are quite clear in what we as a programme team are looking for successful abstracts to include within the conference. The reviewers go through their abstracts and mark them up against these guidelines in a very similar way to when you apply for a job. Your job application is marked up against a personal specific spec, a person specification. So the reviewers submit their reviews with comments, and then they can choose whether the abstracts are suitable for inclusion with no changes. They can go straight in the programme, not suitable at all for inclusion, or they could be, but there needs to be some changes. All these reviewers' comments are anonymous, so they don't know whose papers they're reviewing, and the people who are reviewing the people's papers they're reviewing don't know who's reviewed their papers, so it's all completely anonymous. All the reviewers' comments are considered by the programme committee. That is made up of myself, Jess, Sam, and Alison Hicks. And Alison Hicks is the editor of the Journal of Information Literacy, which is the journal that feeds from LILAC's overarching special interest group, the Information Literacy Group. And it is the programme committee that make the final decision about inclusion in the conference. So we take all of the reviewers' comments into consideration when we are putting together the conference programme. All applicants will receive notification if their abstract has been accepted or not on Friday the 16th of December, and this will be by email, and it will be to the email that you have set up as your LILAC account email. So that's why I'm saying be very clear to create an account with your own email address that you want to receive emails from, rather than say through an administrator emails, your boss's email. Make sure it's yours. If it's been accepted with changes requested, so if there's some things we want you to add or take out or make clearer, then all amendments must be sent back to us by the 26th of January. And the abstract that is finally accepted will be the abstract as it appears on the programme. If you go on the LILAC conference website and look at the archive, there's lots of examples of previous conference programs that include the abstracts within them. So if a good practice tip would be to have a look and see what other successful abstracts look like, what they've included, and what we're looking for to get a flavour of the conference. All presenters must confirm that they are coming to LILAC by the 26th of January. This is so we can put the definite programme together. They thus then purchase a place in the conference themselves. So we can't afford to give our presenters free places within this conference, but all presenters will receive a discount. So they will all be charged the early bird discount on tickets. They can come for the one day that their presentation will be in the conference, or they can come for the whole conference. It's completely up to them. All of their papers will be presented in real time. So we're not doing online papers this year. And if you have a poster presentation, so one of the options for presentations is to submit it as a poster, then you will have to print the poster and bring that poster to yourself to the conference. So the programme of the conference will be available on the website from the 1st of March. So if you are concerned that you can only come for one day of the conference, but you need to buy your ticket earlier than the 1st of March, then you can talk to me and Sam about the day that you need to be appearing in the programme, and we can communicate with you. So now we're going to look, I think, at the reviewer guidelines, just to give you an idea of what sort of things that our reviewers are marking your abstracts up against. So the purpose of the abstract is to persuade reviewers that your paper is worthy of inclusion. It's also to inform the delegates of what your paper is about. So it should summarize what you're going to say and what you're going to do, but also what the delegates are going to get out of coming to that session. So you're really using it to sell the session, not just to the reviewers who are going to mark it up against the guidelines, but also to the delegates who are coming to LILAC itself, because that abstract will appear in the programme. So when you're submitting the abstract to the call for presentations, you've really got to think of it as something that sells your session. So what are they going? What is they going to get out of it? Shall we have a look at the reviewer guidelines now, Sam? Okay, so things that the reviewers are looking for, and all of this is available in a proper document on the LILAC website. How is this original? So how does this presentation relate to or build on previous work in information literacy? In what context, think about it in terms of context, in what context does your work sit? Where does it sit in within the story that you're telling about information literacy? How is it different to previous work? How does it build on previous work? What can we learn from yours? Where does your work sit within the framework of information literacy? They're also looking for rigor. Is the presentation going to describe something or evaluate something? And if it's sharing good practice, how do we know this practice is good? What evidence are you including that you've evaluated what you're presenting to us? Now, it could be that you're presenting something that's in, that you're wanting to present something that's currently being tested and tried. What I'd really recommend to you that you do is think about, is this the right year to present on that work? Because it could be better to wait until next year when you've properly evaluated the activity that, say, it's an activity that you're trialing, to get a sense of how it works in practice, and to be able to present it to us with rigor. The method as well is something that we ask presenters, reviewers to look at. So is it obvious what method was used to carry out the research? Is how you've written up your abstract clear? Okay. Is it an appropriate way to find out what we need to know? So is it clear what you're going to be saying, and are you actually using methods within your research or within your presentation that make sense for the context of the presentation? And this might be the most important thing as all for us as program managers. What is the contribution that you're making? Are there clear findings or takeaways for the audience? And are these findings or takeaways new, or do they repeat something we already know? Now, it might be that they do repeat something we already know, but from a different point of view, looking at it from a different angle, a different sector, looking at it with different people in mind. And that's all good. That don't think that you can't submit something that we've seen before if it's looking at it something from a different angle. But what we're really looking for is abstracts that show where they fit, that might use references to show where they fit, and clearly show what the audience is going to get out of that session. And as I said, the full reviewer guidelines, which I would really recommend you read if you're thinking about putting an abstract in, are on the LILAC website. So if we go back to the types of presentation that we're looking for this year. So in previous years, last year, for example, in Manchester, we had to slim down the conference a fair bit owing to the number of delegates we were allowed to have. So this year, we've really opened up the kinds of presentations that we're looking for. These can include workshops. So a workshop is something that might include active learning, active teaching. It might include you doing something or delegates actually doing something in the session, and these can be IT based as well. So if you need computers for that, let us know, but make sure you're clear about that in your abstract. You're clear of the requirements of the session. The short and the long presentations are the classic ways that people present at conferences. So a short presentation may be 15 to 20 minutes plus time for questions, and usually there'd be 3 of those presentations grouped by a theme within an hour's slot of the conference. So it could be that we'll have 3 presentations looking at different aspects of health literacy. For example, we would put those 3 together and you'd have an hour session that covered 3 short presentations. There's also the longer presentation format, which is usually 40-50 minutes with time for questions as well. And this is when you want to really expand on your topic. You've got a lot to say, a lot to cover in that time. Wildcards are something this year. We have tried it several times at LILAC, and they can be anything you want within reason. So if you've got a really creative, innovative idea for something that you want to do at a conference that you think people would enjoy, think it will get something out of, but is still rigorous, it still fits within the context of information literacy, submit it as a wild card. We would love to see more creative, more engaging sessions. And these can be, going for a run whilst thinking about information literacy, having a weird van outside talking about information. It's up to you. We are open to conversations about this as well. You can always email help@lilacconference.com. Me and Sam, both quite playful practitioners. We've seen quite a lot of stuff before, but there's some stuff we haven't, and we are up for that chat. So please do, if you're thinking about submitting a wildcard, please go for it. We would love to see them. Posters are a session type that people aren't usually keen on doing because they don't see them as prestigious, but they're still really important, and you can get a lot of information on a poster. And some presentations work really, really well as posters. So in the workshop, we were talking about maybe literature reviews or pieces of research that are very data heavy. It might be useful to put them on a poster because then you can display through infographics what message you're trying to get out of them. How posters work: you would print off your own poster. We don't have the functionality to print off posters ourselves, but you would print off your poster, bring it with you to the conference. It would be on display throughout the conference, and then you could have time to stand next to your poster. And if anybody had any questions or wanted to chat more about the poster and where it fit, then they can talk to you then and bring those questions to you. The Teach Meet is something that you may have seen within your smaller professional networks, such as CILIP's local groups, or local networks like M25 or Academic Libraries North. They do Teach Meets a fair bit. You have 7 minutes to present an activity, an idea, a pedagogical idea, something to do with teaching, specifically teaching with information literacy or health literacy or another form of related information literacy. And what you're doing is you're presenting that idea in 7 minutes to a group of people who all take it in turns. So it's a very, very quick way of sharing something small. So this might be a really good idea if you've got an activity that you've been running in class. It might not be so suitable to talk about 50 minutes, but you can sum it up in 7 minutes. You can show it as a micro teach, and people can get a lot out of it. that way. I find Teach Meets incredibly useful in finding out new ideas for my sessions in the future. So I'm really looking forward to the Teach Meets at LILAC this next year. The open review session is a session that is run in conjunction with the Journal of Information Literacy. This is a very small workshop that will be limited to a small number of participants, and it will be looking at producing a journal article at the end of it. If you'd like more information about that, please can you email us and we can put you in touch with the people who will be running that workshop. Full descriptions of each of these session types can be found on the LILAC website. So please do go through the website and make sure that you are aware of the different presentation types and think about where your work would best fit within that. So it's really important to reflect on what kind of session your work would best fit. We have sadly rejected several papers before in the past because it's not been clear that the person who's poured the presentation knows that the workshop, the presentation they're trying to put through actually wouldn't fit the paper that they're looking for. And we might come back and say to them, this might not be suitable for a paper, but it might be suitable for a poster. And then they say, no, I only want to do a paper or nothing. Your work, the reason that you're wanting to share your work should be to share your work. Yeah, so it doesn't really matter if it's a poster, if it's a long presentation, it's a short presentation, if it's part of a Teach Meet. If you are sharing the practice, if you're sharing your work with fellow information professionals, that is the reason that most people want to come to a conference. So have a real think about what kind of session you think your work would best fit within. Over to you, Sam.
Okay, so we wanted to share with you, when Jess and I were discussing this, we wanted to share with you an abstract, a good example of an abstract, and one that was immediately accepted both by the reviewers who anonymously reviewed the abstract, but also the programme panel as well. And this is one of those. So hopefully you can see this. This was from LILAC 2022. It's a really well written abstract, and I'm going to go through why it was so well written and how it met the reviewers' guidelines really briefly. So one of the things that really struck me about this as a well written abstract is that immediately I can see it's broken down into quite short paragraphs, and that to me makes it easily digestible. It makes it easy to kind of look at it and grasp very quickly what it's going to be about. So it keeps it within the word limit, which for a long paper is 500 words, but for a short paper and most of the other presentations, it's 300 words. So it's succinct, but it says a lot, and it meets all of that reviewing guidance that we've already been through. So in particular, what you can see is the background and the introduction, the context for this piece of work is grounded really well in the literature. And not only can you see that just because they've grounded it in terms of adding references, you can see that it's really clear. So the references are there, the references to literature, they're references to IL literature, which is also important. But it's really clear that the way that that the author has structured this, they've really thought about how what they're going to present is actually set within that information literacy landscape. So that's the first thing. And they've done that not just by doing it once, but by doing it a couple of times. So making it absolutely clear what that link is. What they've also done further down, so down into the third paragraph, is they've started to say, they've brought in their personal lens, so they've brought in that originality. Yeah, this workshop is presented by a neurodivergent librarian. Okay, so this is quite original. We've not seen anything like this before, and that's quite that we know this just because we've been to LILAC, we're familiar with programme and issues and IL challenges that come up. But what we can also see here is what they're going to be saying and how that's going to engage with the audience, what it's going to do for them. So you're going to get an overview of those learning challenges, yeah, and they're going to bring their own perspective to this. So that's really, really valuable. And it's very, very succinct. It's within that one sentence that you can see this. As it draws towards the end, and this is where you'll commonly see this, what delegates can be able to walk away with. All right, so what the workshop's going to provide. They're going to provide examples of teaching and other learning support practices that are inclusive and come from the perspective of information literacy. So again, the direct and explicit link back to information literacy is present there, but they're also making it very clear to those people who are reading this. So whether you're a delegate who's thinking of attending this session, whether you're a reviewer who's reviewing this abstract as potential session for the upcoming programme, it's really clear what they're going to be doing and what that link is. And what's also clear is the engagement factor. And this is quite important within a lot of our abstracts, particularly when we're thinking about workshops, or even when we're thinking about short presentations that might include some engagement, panels that might include some kind of discussion. We always talk about how we're going to engage our learners when we're engaged in our information literacy practices. So we want you to be able to say how you're going to engage the delegates and the community in that discussion, and how are they going to, what are they going to learn, what are they going to perhaps come away with. So it doesn't have to be a specific learning outcome, but give the delegates and the reviewers a sense of what you're going to give them, what are you offering them, what are you sharing with them. Because as Jess has already said, this idea of sharing, that's why we go to conferences, that's why we're taking our work to conferences, is to have an effect or an impact or an influence on other people's practices and on the IL community at large. So this is a good example of an abstract that was accepted immediately, without any revisions, without any amendments. And that was why, and I hopefully I've given a good enough explanation of why we accepted that immediately.
I was on this session, in this session as well, and it was an excellent session.
I missed it, and I was so upset to miss it, but I know that it was really, really popular at the time. And the other thing, which actually we've not put on here, is the title. It's really important to have a good title that is reflective of the content. And sometimes we do ask people to either shorten their title or make it a little bit clearer, you know, to match it up. So I think it's making sure that your title is reflective of what it is that you're going to say as well. Because remember, you're summarising, you're briefly encapsulating what you're going to say to catch the attention of the delegates. And you might be one abstract amongst 5 or 6 for that particular time slot on that particular day. So you really want to have clarity for the delegates to be able to decide. A lot of delegates come to the conference with, they're going to find out about this one thing, or they're going to find out about inclusivity, they're going to find out about scholarly communications, they're going to find out about how to engage learners in health libraries. So what they're looking for are very specific things. So you want to be able to draw those people in. So one of the other things that we wanted to share with you was the common areas of feedback, the most common areas of feedback. So we've talked to you a little bit about the reviewers' guidelines, so what the reviewers are looking for. We've shown you what a good one looks like. So you've had a look at the structure of a good accepted without amendments abstract. So also what we wanted to share was, what do we most commonly feed back to colleagues about, in terms of when we perhaps say we don't think this is quite suitable right now? And it does link back directly to the reviewer's guidance. And so the first thing is that we find sometimes the work that they've done is not necessarily grounded. And by that, what I mean is it's not clear enough how the work fits into the current information literacy landscape, the current conversations that are taking place at the moment. Things perhaps have been omitted, and that might be references. to academic literature, or it might be references to other conference presentations that have happened either at LILAC in the past or at other conferences, or things that have inspired them. But that fit perhaps isn't quite shared as explicitly as it could be. The second thing is that sometimes it's hard to identify what is good. So what we want to know is, okay, so you've done a thing and that thing worked really, really well. Yeah. And you might have done that thing twice and you thought that it worked really well. But tell us why it's good. Why was your work so good? How do you know that it was good? How can you say people thought this was good, or I thought this was good? How have you evaluated it? And it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, a real formal evaluation. And it might be quite reflective. It might be, I think this was good, and you've gone into a really deep critical reflection on what it is that you've done, and that's okay. But tell us why it's good. The third thing that we quite often have to have conversations about is this clarity of expression. And what we mean by that is, what actually are you going to be talking about? Are you describing something? Are you describing that thing that you've done? All right. Are you analysing something, or are you researching something? And sometimes it isn't very clear from the abstract what's being proposed. So make it clear. Yeah. Have you analysed something? Is that what you're going to be talking about? Are you presenting some research that you've been doing? Or are you telling us about an activity that you've done that you're going to describe? And if you're presenting and describing something, is that the best way for you to do that? Maybe there's a different way that you could do it whereby people could practice or experience it. And that's sometimes when we might make those suggestions to change up the kind of the type, and move it from perhaps being presenting about this to being a workshop. We never get enough workshops. Do workshops, show us. Yeah, don't just tell us, show us. We really want to hear, we really want to hear and see what you do. Don't be shy. And finally, and this does happen a little more often than we'd really like, is how is what you're doing original? Really tell us what that new thing is. And like Jess was saying just before, it doesn't have to be something that has never ever happened before, that brand new shiny thing. What it can be is a new lens on that thing that perhaps someone has done before in a health library and you've then done in a school library. What's new? What application? What practicality? What have you changed? What have you adapted? What have you changed to that particular methodology, that particular classroom practice, that framework? What have you adapted? Tell us what's new, but make sure when you're writing your abstract, you're explaining that. Yeah, it's that is sometimes missing. So we can see that perhaps, well, it is different, but you've not perhaps explained that quite so well. And it's really difficult for us to make decisions sometimes and work with the reviews when we're thinking about asking people to perhaps think and make amendments, making the judgment between saying no, not at the moment, because, and giving some feedback, but then we do like to think, are there amendments that can be made? So quite often it is really hard to say, can amendments be made? How much is an amendment on this? And do we need to have a conversation about it? One thing that is worth thinking about is our acceptance rate for the conference is between 65 and 75%. So we don't decline as many papers, but it's really important that when you're submitting that abstract, you are submitting a good abstract that is worth the reviewer's time and the programme team's time as well, and you've not just submitted it perhaps off there, you know, at the last minute necessarily. So those common areas of feedback relate directly generally to the reviewer's guidance, and we always try to match them up where we can. I'm going to stop sharing the slides there, but I think we've captured pretty much a lot of what we said within our webinar, haven't we, Jess?
Yes, I think so. And I think that it's important to remember that we are open to having conversations with you. So if you do want support, you can always email help@lilacconference.com. It will come through eventually. It's a shared inbox, but it will come through to the program team. And, you know, we are professionals within information literacy. We've both been doing this job for a while now. But, you know, I had my first conference abstract accepted in LILAC in 2014. So, you know, I have been there. I know what it's like, and it can be quite nerve-wracking, and we really want to see some new voices this year, because we want to use our privilege to lift up the sector and lift up the voices that should be heard. So if there is any way that we can support you through that, obviously we cannot write an abstract for you, but we would love to see more new voices, more new work, different interpretations of old work. You know, there's only so many ways you can teach somebody how to do a reference, but can you do it through a different lens? You know, that's the sort of thing that we're interested in. So we really look forward to hearing from you, and good luck with your submissions.
Absolutely, we're really excited about seeing them come in over the next few weeks. We can't tell you how excited we get when we look into the system and we can see that they're starting to stack up. One of my final suggestions is going to be, don't leave it until the last day. Maybe we don't look at them until after the closing day. We don't send them out for review until after the closing day. But we don't want any, you know, technical hitches where you're having to get in touch with us and say, oh, I can't log in. So try not to leave it until the very last day. And yeah, just emphasize what Jess said. If you want to get in touch and just run any ideas past us, and we have had a few actually over the past week or so where people have been in touch, do that, and we are more than happy to either point you towards things that have happened in LILAC previously that we are aware of, or just have that conversation with you about what might be new, original, or a different lens on it, or just see if if you've got that suggestion of a wild card. That we would love to hear that. And we'd love to hear about any collaborations that you might have if you're working across organisations or institutions. We're always dead happy to see that.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for listening to our webinar. We hope it's been useful, and hopefully see you at LILAC. Bye-bye.